And, of course, we start with what happened in the National Football League last night. Tampa Bay Buccaneers get it done ultimately. Get it done, speaking of just winning the game now, get it done by beating the Dallas Cowboys 31-29 yesterday. They failed to cover, obviously, what ended up being a 9.5-point spread at close in most locations. Some had 9, some 9.5. But didn't get close to that in the end. Tampa Bay needs a field goal from Ryan Suckup with 2 seconds left to win the game, 31-29. And Jeffrey, you called this game bizarre. I'm going to get into that here momentarily with you as to why you chose to use that word. But let me just start at the top. I've said it on this show. I've said it on Primetime Action. I said it on the Beating the Book podcast yesterday, which debuted, by the way, with Todd Wishnev and Mike Palm and Brady Cannon as our first guest, where we go through all of our Week 1 thoughts, including best bets, teasers of the week, which game we want to stay away from, which are the big favorites we think is the most likely to lose outright, that kind of thing. But what I have said on all 3 of those platforms was the main thing we should remember heading into the NFL season, and this on the heels of a college football Week 1, which proved the same about college football, is that none of us knows anything. We think we know, we don't really know. So we're going to inevitably be right about some stuff in all of our 2-3 months of preseason talk prior to the college football and the NFL seasons. But Week 1 in college football proved, right? It's like, yeah, North Carolina, maybe not. Iowa State, maybe not. On and on down the line in college football. All the things we think we know, conventional wisdom, or all the consensus buzz that was going on about certain teams. Now, you don't want to overreact to Week 1 either, but what it should have driven home is that is generally that is generally true in football. With football handicapping, again, there's a reason why we always say just because it's the sports we grew up loving, and it is the sport we grew up loving. I can remember loving nothing in life earlier than loving football, but doesn't mean it's necessarily the best betting vehicle. So you have to maintain a humility in football that you don't necessarily in other sports if you really do have better numbers in other sports. But football, man, just a quick reminder on day 1 in the NFL, game 1, there are a lot of people who thought Tampa Bay was going to roll the Dallas Cowboys. They needed, again, a field goal with 2 seconds left just to beat them. So that's the first thing, the humility of just understanding that none of us truly knows anything with anywhere close to 100% certainty. That extends also into Survivor. And let me say, Jeff, I ended up with 5. Last year I had 2 Circa Survivor entries. Lost one Week 1, got the second one all the way to Week 15. This year I went with 5. And I employed on one of them last night the strategy of playing Tampa Bay because even if they lost, I could re-up with 1. By the way, it's Gill Alexander. It is a numbers game at VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, VSiN.com, the VSiN app, Fubo, Sling, Game Plus, iHeartRadio, YouTube TV, where we appreciate our new audience there. So this year I went with 5, played Tampa Bay on one of them just because I could re-up it here with the deadline tomorrow still on Circa Survivor. Tampa Bay just gets by. Now, Tampa Bay teaser leg, it depends what number you got, and it depends what length of teaser you played. For those of us who played a 6-point teaser at 7.5, very fortunate, like myself. The Tampa Bay teaser leg gets home. But if you played a 6-point teaser anywhere higher than that, nope. Meaning 8.5 or 9.5, 8 would have pushed the teaser leg. But if you played a 7-point teaser leg, different story. But for those of us who played the 6-point teaser leg at 7.5, we just get by. Buccaneers money line and Survivor plays just get by. And obviously the Cowboys win against the spread. As far as the game itself, and Jeffrey, I'll bring you in for this. First of all, let's get to the stuff that is the more meaningless stuff. How quickly are we going to get, or how long is it going to take for us to get used to these jersey numbers? Like as soon as the first play of the game, Leonard Fournette got the rush, got the play call, I was like, I think that's Leonard Fournette. It's Leonard Fournette wearing number 7.
How about 7 tackling 7?
7 tackling 7. Apparently number 7, though, Matt Brown reminded me, it was like a big deal at LSU, that number. That's why he chose that.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. But still, that's going to, Tom Brady's right, that's going to take a bit of getting used to for all of us. And then, look, what are the biggest sort of things of the game? First of all, Dak Prescott back. Let's just establish that. Reports of that leg being an issue. And no, he wasn't as frisky perhaps running the football. But that'll come. 42 of 58 for 403 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, sacked once. By the way, the 44-year-old guy on the other side of the field who had the game-winning drive, 32 of 50 for 379, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, no sacks. He's pretty good at football. So on the Cowboys side of it, you're like, good. You know, if you're a Cowboys fan or a Cowboys backer, yes, you're upset at the result. Of course you are, that you lost and you had it perhaps in your grasp. And yeah, maybe you don't have the greatest in-game coaching guy ever. You missed 2 field goals and extra point. One of the field goals was a 60-yarder. And so it's not really Greg Zuerlein's fault that he missed the 60-yarder. But Mike McCarthy choosing to go for that 60-yarder with 20 seconds left in the half. Literally knowing, all right, my dude just missed a chip shot field goal. And when I say missed it, I mean missed it. Like if you extended the goalpost at the same width over to the left, he still might have missed that field goal. And then, of course, the extra point, which he doinked. Then you're like, okay, I'm going to try a 60-yarder. But the point of that is, even if he hadn't missed those 2, if he misses a 60-yarder, this just in, not a lock of a kick for anybody, Tampa Bay gets the ball at midfield, spot of the kick. He got totally bailed out.
Completely bailed out. And look, Dallas kind of looked like last night what I thought they were going to be last year, which was incredibly talented team, great offense that has to score a ton because their defense just isn't that good, which, granted, Gill, I thought their defense did a little bit better than I anticipated last night because they forced all those turnovers. And look, covering those Tampa Bay wide receivers is going to be a hard task for everyone this year.
It's going to be brutal. I mean, but, besides the result, and I get it, the result's the only thing that ultimately matters.
Totally insane decision.
You got to feel good if you're a Cowboys fan, I think, because you're like, all right, well, we got Dak, and that offense was humming. Our defense still sucks. But you're right, Jeff. Like Antonio Brown on Anthony Brown, the fact that they went one-on-one coverage, like that was the guy they ended up putting one-on-one. With Tampa Bay, if you're getting something close to the Steelers' version of Antonio Brown, and if you're getting something close to the Patriots' version of Rob Gronkowski, It's kind of like, by the way, keep in mind Arizona has A.J. Green, and all the reports from training camp are A.J. Green looks like the Bengals' A.J. Green, like pre-corpse A.J. Green Bengals. So keep that in mind, too. But if that's what the Bucs have, and we still haven't seen like Giovanni Bernard in full swing, and I do mean swing with the swing passes from Brady. I mean, if you're Tampa Bay, the thing that changed, that I think made that game as close as it is, and it's kind of get glossed over, that injury to Sean Murphy Bunting in the first half. That was the one area where they had no depth, Tampa Bay, in the secondary. I think that more than anything changed the outcome of that game. But you called it bizarre. You as a macro statement, Jeff, you said that's a bizarre game. What did you mean by that?
Because it felt like both teams had cases why they should have won the game.
Yeah.
And both teams had plenty of cases why they should have lost that game last night.
I agree.
And you normally don't see that in the opening Thursday night game. Gill, it's very rare we get competitive Thursday night games to open the season. Usually it's a beat down one way or the other. But look, Gill, I think one other thing you can take from last night too is that Dallas's offensive line, without their best player, with no Zach Martin, held up pretty darn well against a great front four in Tampa. And that is a big takeaway moving forward, getting Martin back. Look, Dak missed some throws early, but as the game went along, his arm started to pick up. The interception that led to a Tampa Bay score, that wasn't his fault. He put it right on CeeDee Lamb's hands, and CeeDee Lamb dropped it right into the bucket for Tampa. But all in all, I was impressed with Dallas. They looked a lot better than I thought they were going to be. And if they had a real coach, they would have won that game last night.
If they had a real, Todd would say the same thing ever. It's like if you're a good coach, you figure out a way to manage that clock and win that game. I think, but that it was much more egregious. What happened at the end of the first half is just it's unassailably. It's you can't defend that. Oh, what he did kicking that 60-yarder. It's like, how not present are you to make that decision in a football game? But back to the Buccaneers now for a second. The Buccaneers, well, we say the Cowboys, even though they lost, if you're a Cowboys backer or a Cowboys fan, you ought to feel good about that in some respects. I think if you're the Buccaneers and you only win that by 2, forget the cover, you got to feel great about it too. You were -3 in turnovers. You had 4 turnovers, -3 in differential, and you committed 11 penalties in this game for 106 yards. How many times were you -3 with 11 penalties for over 100 yards do you win a football game against anyone in the National Football League?
Doesn't happen very often.
Doesn't happen very often. In fact, if we track that the rest of the year, I don't think it exceeds 1 hand. 5 fingers, by the way. So, I mean, that is also what makes that game kind of bizarre. Now, by the way, the whole criticism of Mike McCarthy shouldn't be reserved for just one coach. How did you feel about that final drive of the game? So Greg Zuerlein hits the field goal with, and I want to get this right, with 1:24 left in the game. He hits a 48-yarder to put Dallas up, 29-28. So the Bucs get the football, and it's, okay, here we go. Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, chance to lead his team to a game-winning field goal. That's all they needed. So, they start the drive. It ends up being, so they use their, so here's what happens. So with 55 seconds left, it's 1st and 10 at their own 37. And Tampa Bay commits a false start. And Bruce Arians decides, in order to get away from the 10-second runoff at that point, he says, I'll use our last timeout, and I'll take the 5-yard penalty. What did you think about that decision at the time?
I thought that was the wrong move.
I did too.
I thought that was the wrong move, even though it worked, even though it ended up working out.
Both of those guys got bailed out for what they did.
It ended up working out, but
yeah.
I would have taken the 10-second runoff, saved my timeout. So again,
yes.
Even though Dallas really only had pressure when they brought extra guys last night, you get a sack when you have no timeouts, the game's over. At least if you had that timeout in the pocket again, it didn't matter. Because Brady made the big play to Godwin, which, by the way, that was not offensive PI. I really don't think it was.
I don't think it was either.
I think it was just 2 guys hand fighting. It just looked worse when you slowed it down.
This is where Chris Collinsworth, being a former wide receiver, is great because he explained it perfectly. So when you do a little move like that, that corner is right on your shoulder. There can't help but be some contact there. I agree with you, and I agree with you about Arians. That timeout is worth so much at that point. More than the 10 seconds. If it was 30 seconds to 20 seconds, okay, maybe a different story. But from 57 seconds to 47 seconds, keep the time out. That was fascinating to me. But as you said, got bailed out. So I think both of those coaches were, how can I put this, not the greatest decision makers last night, and both got bailed out in the end. So it didn't matter. Fascinating football game. And in some weird way, I think both fan bases and both, if you're backing any of the Cowboys stuff and Buccaneers and futures plays, you almost have to feel good in either case. Yes.
I have one last take on Tampa.
Please.
They should never run the ball. Never. They should throw the ball every single play.
I think they already treat it like a just keep it honest kind of thing. I will give the Cowboys credit for one thing in the first half. They realized very quickly Zeke wasn't doing anything. And they went away. They were just like, we're passing the football. I thought they do deserve credit for that quick sort of maneuver. But just fascinating. And so glad to have football back. How great was that on a Thursday night? And the fact that we could just freely talk about football and not, I don't know, whatever it was we might talk about in the middle of July about something. So Survivor, let's get to that here. Are you in Survivor ultimately, Jeff?
I am not. No.
You are not.
No.
Okay. So I did the 5 entries. 6 was the max. Last year I had 2, but I ended up with 5. Had 6 in my pocket. Decided to do 1 on millions. So no millions picks in that game, but I did have again the Buccaneers in one of the 5 because of the fact that the deadline again extends to Saturday. So even if the Bucs had lost, I would have been able to re-up because the max was 6. So Buccaneers gets through. The question is what to do with the other 4. What to do with the other 4? What are the candidates for the other 4? And that's the other big point I wanted to make about this, Jeff. Getting back to, I buried the headline on the none of us knows anything. You heard a lot of this in many spots. oh, I got to make my Survivor map from the beginning of the season. And what did I say all week or all month or all summer? Hey, I probably wouldn't do it that way. I'd probably watch the first 3, 4, 5 weeks of the season and then do your map. Why? Because none of us knows anything. And yes, Tampa Bay got through yesterday, but we all got kind of fortunate. So this notion that somehow you can map this out from week one, yeah, we don't know these teams. We don't. And this week one is always a bit of a crapshoot because with these other 4, and by the way, it is a little more confusing having 5 of these things. I almost hate myself for having gotten 5 because it's more confusing than anything because you almost have to strategize against yourself, too, an extra layer. But here are the candidates, Jeffrey. Obviously, the big favorites, right? The Rams, 7.5-point favorites against the Bears. The Niners on the road, 7.5-point favorites. That's ticked up to 8, by the way. Now even some 8.5s and 9s on the road against Detroit. That's a candidate. But what about some of the other ones that are beneath those? Which of these teams do you trust? Do you trust Atlanta hosting Philadelphia? Because optimally, you would like to take teams that you would probably never play again or might only have like one opportunity maybe to play again. So do you trust the Falcons against the Eagles? Do you trust the Vikings at the Bengals? that elicited a reaction from you? That was a quick no?
No way.
No way. What about the Falcons, who I just mentioned?
I think the Eagles are going to be bad, but I kind of will subscribe to the Wishnap camp on this. Do you really want to sit through a game where the Falcons are up 17 going to the fourth quarter, and then Jalen Hurts has the ball down either 7 or 3 with a minute to go and needing a stop with that horrible defense?
I'll tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not doing that double option Jacksonville-Houston thing. I'm not prepared to sacrifice an entry.
Well, the thing that would happen there is the game ends in a tie, and you end up out of luck regardless.
There's your double option. Turns out it was a triple option. Didn't factor that in. Ties or losses, ladies and gentlemen. So I don't know. Is there another candidate there? Again, what you're looking for besides the obvious ones. But here's the thing. I really do believe, getting back to the original point, I really do believe the first 4 or 5 weeks, and this coming from someone who was fortunate enough to get all the way to week 15 last year, I do think you don't get cute the first part of the season. You don't, because shall I say it again? We don't know anything.
What do you think of New England?
So that was another one I was going to bring up. That was another one. Question is, with New England, there's I can't, like, off the top of my head, I don't have it in front of me, but at the top of my head, is there a better place to use them later? And keep in mind, with Circa, you have to be cognizant of the Thanksgiving teams, and you have to be cognizant of the Christmas teams, 6 in each.
Oh, so just eyeballing their schedule real quick, Gill.
Yeah.
They have a home game against the Jets in week 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have a home game against Jacksonville in week 17, which you very well may not even have to worry about a week 17.
Yeah, but I guess getting back to the original topic sentence of this, to use the old grade school English thing, I have to take my own advice. I don't know anything. But do I trust New England? I think New England's going to be I think the reason I bring up what I just brought up, I think New England and Atlanta, at least, are going to be 2 of my Circa Million picks. Though Circa Millions, in their infinite wisdom, shaded the New England line to 3.5, and I hate them for it. It's so frustrating. It's hard enough, man. Come on, Circa. It's hard enough as it is to pick games this week. Week 1, you and I established that on Wednesday when we went through these. Like, which do we like? Which do we don't like? So many more we don't like than we do. And now now if you shade a line, even on the ones you like, it's like, oh my God, can I at least get that one?
The shade to 3.5 was cruel.
Oh, brutal.
It was cruel.
It's just brutal.